Hello everybody and welcome to another Doctor Who review. This time we're reviewing an 11th Doctor story. It's the Doctor's Wife. As it is a new series review, I am not doing a plot synopsis like we do with the television companion on the classic series. We're just going straight into the review and have a talk about it. So here we go. So the Doctor, Rory and Amy receive a emergency telekinesis cube, which was originally seen in the War Games, starring Patrick Troughton, from another Time Lord. The Doctor believes that the Time Lords have survived, but they're on the outside. They're in a bubble universe outside the main universe. And the TARDIS travels there. Immediately as it travels there, the power seems to die, the TARDIS matrix seems to be deleted, and the Doctor tries to find out what happened. What has happened is a person called Idris has been killed by the entity that they've come to, House. So the TARDIS matrix can be put into her. And there's an initial interplay between the Doctor and the TARDIS. Talk to each other, fighting a little bit. The Doctor thinks she's a bit mad to start with and then realises rather quickly that maybe she's not as mad as he thinks. And the whole discussion about that and the whole platform and the back and forth between them is really lovely and really nice. Then you've got Rory and Amy, who are told to go to the TARDIS to get the Doctor's sonic screwdriver as a safety mechanism. House then takes over the TARDIS and travels away after the Doctor reveals that he's the last of the Time Lords. The Doctor and Amy are then running about the corridors of the TARDIS with various time effects happening to them, including Rory dying at one point, which, yeah, that trope continues. It seems to be every friggin' story you got Rory dying at some point. It's nuts. And they end up with the Doctor managing to use bits of old TARDIS from the junkyard that they've landed on the planetoid that they've landed on, because it's all bits of old TARDIS, to land back into their TARDIS with the TARDIS matrix, and managed to save the day. And that's basically the plot. It's a fun little romp, and it's Neil Gaiman's first writing for Doctor Who. His second wasn't as successful, and when we come to that review you'll probably find out why. This one is actually very solid. It takes an idea that we thought for ages, what will the Doctor do if he could talk to the TARDIS, and the whole interplay between them, and even though it's 45 minutes, it works. It does work. It's a great little story for that. Few interesting points for this one before we go into each of the characters. You've got a few strange and put together characters in the planetoid, House's planetoid. You've got Nephew, who is an Ood, that's been taken over. You've got Auntie, you've got Uncle, and you've got Idris. And Auntie and Uncle seem to have parts replaced and they get repaired. So they feel House is good because they get repaired with body parts. So basically, at one point it's noted that Uncle has ended up getting the spine and the kidney of one Time Lord, and Auntie's got the arm of the same Time Lord. And this Time Lord is the one that brings the Doctor to the planetoid called the Corsair. Now, the Corsair had a tattoo that they like to have on every regeneration that they have, and that was on the telecommunication box the Doctor finds in the TARDIS, or Doctor arrives in the TARDIS. And it's interesting how the Doctor realises rather quickly, and I think it's really sad, when he realises all the telecommunication boxes in a little kind of cupboard, and that's all the psychic energy he was hearing, because at one point he hears lots of Time Lord voices and he thinks there's lots of Time Lords in the planet, but it isn't. It's just their emergency callings out to the universe, which obviously have never been answered. And the whole interplay about House being a kind of parasite that feeds off TARDISes and the Artron energy, and loves the fact that the Time Lords are his food source. Well, not for much longer, because once the TARDIS machine has its Artron energy removed, it's effectively the last, and he then tries to find other food sources, which is why the machine then disappears with House as the consciousness in it. So it's an interesting little interplay and mix there. There's a nice few comments that they say between each other, the Doctor and Idris. One of the best bits I like is the conversation they have when they're building the TARDIS, the new, the scrap TARDIS, and the argument they have between them, like father and daughter, father and husband and wife rather, not father and daughter, husband and wife. And the fact that the TARDIS comments on the fact that he brings strays in all the time, and the Doctor complains about the fact the Doctor always pushes instead of pulls the door open on the TARDIS, because obviously the display says pull to open. That's a little bit of a silly misinterpretation, but I suppose when you're an entity like the TARDIS, I suppose you have that sort of thought process, maybe, I don't know. And then we've got the conversation where the Doctor says, "You never took me where you want me to go." But the TARDIS said, "No, I always took you where you needed to go." And it's kind of like he realised then, no, hang on a minute, this person really, this entity really does care for me and really wants to work with me. And I love the fact that the TARDIS thinks that she stole the Doctor, but the Doctor thinks he stole the TARDIS. And I love that kind of interplay, the fact that she wanted adventure and the Doctor was there to aid her, and they've been together for what was over 700 years at this point. And yeah, they really do care for each other. It's a really good little story to have that interplay for, and it's a nice little break from some of the stuff you get in between here, from the other subplots you get in Doctor Who Series 6. You do have elements of the subplot here with the story of Melody Pond and the fact that Amy is pregnant, or that's not mentioned in this one, but there's some more seeds are laid down in this episode. Very small seeds, but they're still laid there, so you can see it. So you can see that going forward. It's interesting, the whole story in whole, and it was a fun romp to watch. It goes at a quite quick pace. It really is quite fun. We'll go into more about the characters that are on screen and describe them a bit more. So you got Matt Smith playing the Doctor as always. Not as always, but he's the Doctor here. And he's found his role. He's comfortable with his role. The fact he's trying to be happy-go-lucky and funny and friendly with the Doctor and Amy initially, and then when he realises that there is something wrong, he protects them, tries to protect them straight away. The Amy sees through it, but still responds. The Doctor turns, and I love the way that the 11th Doctor can turn like that to his happy-go-lucky, silly self, Troughton-esque element, to the very dark side that we see of the 11th Doctor, and it's very apparent here when he gets angry and annoyed. And the phrase that Idris says, Idris TARDIS says, "The little boxes will make you angry," certainly is true, although he's not as angry as you expect him to be when he realises. It's more like a sadness when he realises that he is definitely the last of the Time Lords and this was a trick. I don't think it really makes him angry, so that statement doesn't quite work. But overall, I suppose it's a channeled anger. It's not an anger, seething anger, which I've seen the 11th Doctor do. It's more like a channeled anger to get a result. Matt Smith plays it well. I mean, Matt Smith is brilliant as a Doctor anyway. He was the Doctor you kind of needed after David Tennant's massive success. And you've got the other example, I'd say, of a very successful Doctor followed on by a Doctor who is not quite successful but still a good replacement, was Tom Baker to Peter Davison. The plotting is still pretty simple with this story. It becomes a hell of a lot more convoluted the further you get into Matt Smith's era, but this one's not too bad. And ultimately, it's not a bad little adventure and characterisation of the Doctor. It gives all the good hit points of the Doctor that you like from the 11th Doctor. He's not overly over the top. He's not overly doer and manipulative like he can be. I think it's just the right balance here of Matt Smith's character. You then got Karen Gillan playing Amy Pond. There's obviously a established relationship between her and the Doctor by this point, and Amy kind of trusts the Doctor to make the right decision most of the time, but she will question it if she feels there's something not quite right, which is the role of the companion. She is the key companion here. When they're in the TARDIS corridors, House is playing on Amy's perceptions more than Rory's, and the fact that she's feared for losing Rory, House plays on quite heavily, I think is probably the polite way of putting it. Is quite a heavy reliance on Amy's emotions to try and play with her mind, and the scenes are kind of seen from her point of view more than Rory's. Rory's is kind of like the plot device here, which is a bit disappointing. But Karen Gillan plays it solidly. There's no issue with the way she's doing it. It's a nice turn, as always, from Karen Gillan. She doesn't seem to put a foot wrong with this character. There are times where the embracing of her kind of doesn't quite come across, but Karen Gillan's proven in other projects that she is a good actress, and this is certainly a good start to her career here with Amy. And I do like this characterisation that is being portrayed of Amy at the moment. You then got Rory Williams played by Arthur Darvill, and Arthur Darvill never puts a foot wrong with what he acts. Very solid performance. I get the feeling that Rory's kind of a slightly spare part, although I like the fact that Idris decided to telepathically communicate with Rory to get into the secondary console room, the old Tennant's TARDIS. I like the fact that the TARDIS likes to archive the old desktop themes, and she states it's about 30 so far. The Doctor admits he's had maybe about 10 or 12. So obviously there's a lot more TARDIS to go through. And that kind of makes sense because there seems to be new TARDIS desktop themes virtually every Doctor now, which is something you didn't really get in the classic series. You had variations on the theme, but now you've kind of got different styles every time to suit the Doctors, which I think works a lot better. But Rory Williams, played by Arthur Darvill, is played very straight. Rory's an endearing character in respect that you do think he's slightly out of his depth at times, but he kind of respects the Doctor. He's obviously head over heels for Amy, and obviously at this point they're married, so the Mr. and Mrs. Pond, not Williams, Mr. and Mrs. Pond, and the whole setup they have with each other and the interplay between each other, it works so well. It's great. It's obvious they all have a good chemistry, the three of them. But it's a solid turn from Rory, and I can't really say much about anything wrong or right from the performance because it's just solid. I don't think the character's written 100% the way it should be in this story, but it's good enough. You then got some of the guest cast. I'll come back to the two biggies in a minute. We've got Paul Casey, who plays nephew, who is obviously the Ood. So Paul Casey again playing one of the monster roles. Doesn't really do much. He's kind of like a set dressing with the glowing green eyes. Not really much to say about the Ood, but this is the first appearance of the Ood since End of Time, and used as a side character. And the Ood is then used as a side character once more in the 13th Doctor's era, but we'll get to that when we get to that. You've then got Adrian Schiller, who plays Uncle. Very unsettling character. I think that's the way it's written, because the Uncle seems to be semi-friendly, and then there's an ulterior motive there, but he's not 100%, he's not the most intelligent man in the world. I think he is a bit simple, but he's manipulative simple, if you know what I mean. And it's in an interesting turn that Adrian Schiller does. Elizabeth Berrington playing Auntie is actually pretty solid. This kind of West Country, kind of Somerset type of voice to her makes her seem a bit more simple, and it comes across as a better simpleness than Uncle does, and the fact they really care for each other. It's an interesting characterization of them too. It's kind of like they're very reliant on this malevolent being of House, and the kind of childlike way they respect him and love him is very creepy, and does make for an interesting story overall. And the two of them play the role brilliantly. You then got Martin Sheen, who voices House. Very sinister sound in the TARDIS, an entity in the TARDIS, and Martin Sheen is a very good actor. It's a shame he's not actually on screen here, he's just using his voice, but you get a sense of menace from him, the way the voice is used, and House is an intriguing kind of entity that you don't really see. It's all voice, and it's maybe a couple of lighting effects here and there of a greenish hue to indicate evil, the default for evil in Doctor Who. And then you've got the manipulation of Amy and Rory in the TARDIS is quite fun. I quite liked the way it was portrayed with him. Yeah, it's a solid role, but I wish I could see it on the screen. That would have been probably better. The best guest cast, of course, is Saran Jones playing Idris, or the TARDIS Matrix. She nails the fact of going from slightly uncertain posh girl to a girl who's been manipulated in the TARDIS casing, and the whole insanity of the TARDIS and the complications and the things she gets confused and not confused, and the whole vacant look she gives and the confusion she has in her face when she's trying to think things out of time and out of sync and trying to get used to this body and everything else, and the whole conversation she has with the Doctor later on. Saran Jones plays it to perfectly. I think that's probably why it's a kind of Doctor TARDIS piece, this one, because the two of them are the leads and they are the stars here, and it works really well, the whole conversation they have between them. Saran Jones just nails it. She really nails it, and it's good when you have something like that you enjoy, and it's not just due to the writing. The writing's good, but the characterization and the way the actors play that writing brings it to another level, which is really, really fun and really exciting. The direction is pretty okay. It's pretty standard 1-2 camera setup. There's not really many high or low shots or anything like that. It's not really imaginative in its direction. I don't think it really needs to. I think this is more like a play scene, a piece of play, of a television play or kind of idea. You've got the fantastical for sci-fi elements, but really the bits with the Doctor and Idris are very well much a two-shot with closer cutaways between the two of them when they're in conversation. But it works for just the fact of very simple direction, very clean direction, No special or major shots or any specific lighting issues or anything like that. It just is directed very solidly, and he does let the actors all shine and perform, and let the actors do the work on screen more than actually him doing the visual work on screen. And that sort of thing is great because it doesn't really intrude in the overall feel of the story. Another thing it doesn't intrude is Murray Gold's music. I really didn't hear much of it. There is the leitmotifs there, but it's very understated, it's very underpowered, and it's not very high concept. It's not very high parpy peepy with all the flutes and all that. It is very restrained, and it just helps with the undercurrent you have of this story, this foreboding menace you have of, and realization the Doctor has that obviously he is the last of the Time Lords still, and what's happened with House and the way he's brought all these Time Lords onto this planetoid, and his anger, seething anger about it. And the music just complements it. It doesn't overpower. It's a very good, competent musical score from Murray Gold. And this is the area where he's starting to get a bit more pompous and bombastic. This isn't one of them, and it really does benefit the story for that. So it's written by Neil Gaiman. It's a solid enough script, and I'm not sure whether there is a lot of reworking from Stephen Moffat or not. It seems to have a different style to the Moffat stories that come before it and after. I don't think it is written fully by Moffat. I think there's a lot of Neil Gaiman script in there. It's not like some stories where they credit the writer and it's obviously been heavily rewritten by another person. However, this one is actually quite a fun story. It's written pretty solidly, and the writing does help to put the pace along, but there's enough room in there, as I say, for the actors to come in and show their pieces and make it the story that it actually is. The one element I did like about the story was the fact that the TARDIS is trying to get a word out all the way through to the Doctor and couldn't do it because her brain's so addled, so much stuff going through her, and the whole way that's played by Saran Jones works so well. She said it's so big but it's so sad, and I thought it was hello. That's the last thing she says, really, when she's the corporeal form before she goes back into the TARDIS proper. When she says, I just want to say hello, because this is the time we talked. But the word she actually wanted to say was, I'm alive. But the TARDIS has always been alive, but alive in the sense of actually being able to talk and communicate is really cool. And I really like the whole subplot of that, because it really does make a difference for the story. Overall, I do like this story. I think it's one of the strongest stories of Series 6, and there's a few clunkers in here. A couple of episodes later is a big clunker. It really is a big plot filler. This one's actually okay. I don't mind it, and I'd give it a TARDIS rating of 4 TARDISes out of 5. I believe that is the first Matt Smith story to have 4 TARDISes out of 5, but how does this fit in with the rest of the stories of the Matt Smith era so far? And of course, how does it fit in with the rest of the stories overall for the television reviews? So the Matt Smith era has only had 5 stories reviewed so far. 4 TARDISes out of 5 puts The Doctor's Wife below The Day of the Doctor at 4.5 TARDISes out of 5. And at 3.5 TARDISes out of 5 are Amy's Choice, Then Medorica Opens, The Big Bang, and The Crimson Horror. So overall, at the bottom is still Time Lash and Sleep No More with 2.5 TARDISes out of 5. And at the top, including The Day of the Doctor, at 4.5 TARDISes out of 5, is The Happiness Patrol, Inferno, The Caves of Androzani, The Tomb of the Cybermen, and Dalek. That's it, guys. Thanks very much for watching this review. Tell me what you think about The Doctor's Wife. Leave a comment down below. Do you like it? Leave a comment down below. Do you not like it? Leave a comment down below. If you like this video as a whole, don't forget to hit that like button and share it with the hashtag teamstructor. Also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the notifications bell so you know when a new video comes out. General rule, new video every Sunday at 4 PM GMT, which is the case this time round. And it's a Kidstructor on Sunday. First one for a while, recorded with Fraser back in February. Hopefully you enjoy it. At the time of recording, I'm not quite sure which one it is of the 3 I recorded, but that's a surprise for you. But until next time, thanks guys for watching as always, and I'll see you later.